So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know there are people attending those sessions in different timelines, and so on. Thank you very much for joining us today for a very, very exciting topic on our series with OECD and COLEAD on fruits and vegetables industry. And today on our session is on factors affecting consumers' choice for fresh fruits and vegetables. So to start with, I will give Isolina Boto, as you know, from COLEAD, but I will give the floor to my colleague, José Brambilla Macias, Program Manager on the Trade and Agriculture Directorate, and specifically Agriculture Code and Schemes at OECD. He has, as you know, first we have the pleasure to organize it with OECD and to interact with José and his team. He has a strong economic background with a specialization in development economics. Before joining OECD, he worked as a researcher and also as an expert for different bilateral and multilateral organizations, also at the Statistics Directorate and the IMF in the Western Hemisphere Department. So he's very, very passionate about the topics of today. And very competent on the technical matters. But thank you, José. I think I know he's very, very busy for you these days with many meetings, high-level meetings and delegations you have to receive. But thank you so much for joining us. So start first.
Thank you, Isolina. Thank you, of course, to COLEAD. This is our 7th joint webinar. So we're very pleased with the results of the webinar, all the attendance that we get in these webinars. As Isolina mentioned, we at OECD, we have a group that deals with fruit and vegetables and the trade of fruit and vegetables. So for us, the topic of this webinar is crucial to understand better what are the trends and the factors affecting consumption of fruit and vegetables. Today, we have a very rich panel. I'm very pleased to see that. We have experts from the Netherlands, from Poland, from Kenya, from the United Kingdom. And we are looking forward to listen what they have to tell us and to learn, of course, about the impacts and the choices of consumers for fruit and vegetables. So I know we have very little time. So again, I want to welcome everybody to this 7th joint webinar with COLEAD, to thank all our experts to sharing their time to be here with us. And of course, Isolina, Axel, Jeremy, and all the COLEAD team for the excellent organization of these webinars. So I give you back the floor, Isolina. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, José. Just quickly, logistics. I mean, we have interpretation today in English and French, so you can always choose the language. At the bottom of the screen, you see a little globe, and you choose the language you want. As you have seen, the session is recorded, so of course, the recordings as well, then all the presentations, PowerPoints, and so on will be shared after the session, as usual. And as usual as well, please put your questions on the Q&A. Put also, any insights, anything you want to share on the chat. And at the end, when all the presenters have shared their work and what they want to tell us, we will get some of your questions. Today, what we want to discuss, and you have seen already the note and the program, and thank you again for joining us, is really to understand better, from those series, we want, of course, to share knowledge about the fruits and vegetables industry. We want, of course, to promote more consumption because we know that it's very low. It's lower than it should be, especially if we want to promote healthy and nutritious diets. So what we want is to advocate for more consumption of fruits and vegetables, but we want also to understand on the topic of today why the consumption and the buying is low. What motivates the consumers to make choices on what they buy, they don't buy, to go into the granularity, sorry. And we have looked at many studies. We have summarized some of them in the notes. And they are very, very interesting results, and sometimes things you don't necessarily expect. It's not all price or quality, quantity, etc. So we want from the speakers and the experts today, who have themselves done a lot of research, to understand a bit better the drivers of choice, and then what we could do to even promote a more the consumption of fruits and vegetables across the hemisphere. And of course, for us in particular, in developing countries, because that's where the OECD works. But with COLEAD works, but with the OECD, we bring also the European context. And as you know, Jeremy actually is in Geneva currently, but you know already that for COLEAD, we are a non-for-profit association of private sector operators across continents. We are an association, but we also deal and manage programs from different donors. This series are supported by the European Union and Organization of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. And our interest is really to show how the private sector contributes, to sustainable food systems. And we provide different services, from technical assistance to capacity development trainings, marketing sites, B2B, and business-to-business exchanges, access to markets, etc. You can find more details in our website and in the links that Axel will share. So thank you very much. We start now to the point. The first panel, or first little session, will look at factors that affect consumer choices for fruits and vegetables. So research, what the research tells us. And the second part, we will bring private sector operators from Europe, from the UK in this particular case, and from Africa, from Kenya, to learn also from the business, what do they know, how do they adapt to consumer changes, choices, etc. So without major delay, I will start by Dr. Michal Gazdecki. I hope the pronunciation is correct. Thank you. Poland, very, very pleased to have you, researcher on the agri-food market analysis and research team in Poznan University of Life Science. You are an economist, market researcher, currently working at the Faculty of Economics at Poznan University of Life Sciences in Poland. You really focus of research is around distribution systems in the food and agriculture markets, and really looking at the application of network and relational approaches to the food sector. You also are actively involved in studying consumer behavior and sustainable consumption topics. You are a project leader for the Food Market Project, which was established in 2012 and aims to address issues in food markets through the organization of scientific conferences. You are, of course, member of several professional organizations and very much involved in the topic of today. So it's a pleasure having you, and we'll listen with a lot of interest about the findings of your research. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Iselina, for this introduction. Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's a great pleasure to be there with you today. First of all, let me thanks for this invitation. It's indeed really great pleasure for us to be able to present the results of the recent study we conducted as a joint teams of two universities. My name is Michał Gazdecki. I will be presenting in the front in behalf of the whole authors team. Results related to the consumer profile of fruits and vegetables consumers. As you all know, and it was mentioned by Iselina, fruit and vegetable consumption might be considered as one of the indicator of a sustainable consumption, how sustainable consumption is. On the other hand, this factor is related by number of qualities, number of issues from the market. And today I would like to focus for the next 15 minutes on the country differences in similarities in terms of the consumption of fruit and vegetables, and on the other hand, to understand better how selected socioeconomic and demographic factors affected consumption of fruits, vegetables across European countries. As I mentioned a few seconds ago, the presentation and the paper was prepared by the joint team of two universities. Poznan University of Life Sciences is represented by Elżbieta Gorińska-Goldman and myself, and the second university, Bydgoszcz University of Science and Technology, is represented by Anna Murawska and Grażyna Balcerowska-Czerniak. Besides the names of the universities seems to be a little bit different, we have a lot in common, and we both units focus on the food system. Therefore, we have a very dense and fruitful communication. As all know, consumption of fruits and vegetables is considered as one of the important factors reaching the sustainable consumption, and it's highly recommended by different organizations, public organizations, private ones, and represented in number of official documents. But on the other hand, reaching the recommended level of consumption is not so easy, and in a number of countries, reaching these goals is much below the expectations. There are a number of reasons for this situation. We can distinguish this reason into two parts. Part of the reason might be related to the consumer itself, and another part to the external factors. Like, for instance, we can discuss about the weather conditions, about the economic crisis, and generally the economic situation, what is related to the price movements as well. On the other hand, when we focus on the consumer itself, we might discuss about the human diets, insufficient or false knowledge related to how beneficial the consumption of fruits and vegetables are. World Health Organization made a recommendation that one individual should consume daily roughly 5 portions of fruits and vegetables, which translates to the 400 grams. This portion is very easy to use unit for the communication with consumers. It's not so precise, but on the other hand, for the communication purposes with someone which is non-professional, it's very useful and powerful unit. I mentioned this because we take into consideration information related to the consumption measured in the doses. And now for the study itself, data collection. We used for the data collection secondary data, which were published by the European Commission and Eurostat. It's coming from the European Health Interview Survey, third wave of this survey. As you can see, the number of collected interviews was quite substantial. Yeah, altogether, 176,000 interviews were collected. So indeed, a huge study, and therefore we were dealing with a huge data set in the study. Therefore, from the methodological point of view, we decided to use principal component analysis method, which is quite sophisticated statistical tool. I'm not going to discuss statistics so deeply, but just let you short indication what was used. But the main goal of the study was to identification of consumers' profile for fruit and vegetable consumption on one hand, and on the other hand, we understand better the demographic and socioeconomic profile of the customers. I like this slide because it's present in a very simple way, but provides you a good understanding of the current situation. We assume that kind of a targeted model of fruit and vegetable consumption, which is represented by this yellow line. By this, we mean that 80% of consumers should eat 5 or more portions of fruits and vegetables daily, and in the same time, 20% from 1 to 4 portions. And this is considered as a targeted solution, let me call it that way. As you can see, when considering the average for the European Union countries, we reached the goal in 44%. So, on other ways, it's still a lot of space for improvement. However, on the other hand, there is a very significant diversification between the countries. When you look at the Ireland, we have a 63, while in the same time, Romania, just 16% of the population reach this targeted solution. Additionally, number of countries is in the scope between 40, starting from Poland, to the 50, ending with Estonia. To understand better the impact of economic and socio-demographic variables, we built a model, and as a dependent variable, we took into consideration the level of daily intake measured in the portions. And from the factors we consider, the gender, the age, education, and the income, so quite standard analysis, some quite standard variables which might be used for the different countries comparison. And as I said, we focus on a daily consumption. Here you have the results, and we focus here on the country specifics and the country differences. As you can see, we distinguish three, let me call it clusters of customers. The first one, 5 portions or more, so the heavy consumers of vegetable and fruits. The second group, the green one, the moderate consumers, so from 1 to 4 portions, and no consumption, the blue ones, as another cluster. Now let me focus on the country specifics. As you can see, the red one, the cluster 5, the cluster 1, they have a very similar situation between the countries. So the country differences are not so present here. We can translate it into the expression that if the person eats a lot of fruits and vegetables, no matter what country it is, from what country he or she is, another qualities impact in a more extent than the country of origin. However, if we consider people with a lower consumption of fruits and vegetables, like the green ones and the blue ones, we can see much more differences between the countries. So it suggests that it might be kind of a local condition specific to each country, which impact this situation. I will refer to this map at the end of the presentation when making the final conclusions. To understand better different variables, we took into consideration sex, age, education level, and the income level. First of all, I would like to stress and took your attention to the differences between the minimum and maximum level. When we have a big differences between the minimum and maximum level for each variable, like for instance, in terms of the age, it means that this specific variable impact in a high extent the dependent variable, so in this case, daily intake. Roughly speaking, we can say age determines a lot, consumption of fruits and vegetables, then we have education and the income. And finally, we can expect that younger people has a higher consumption, then in the same time, better educated people, it's more typical to have a higher consumption of fruit and vegetable, and at the same time, the higher the income is, the higher the consumption is expected as well. Of course, the gender has some impact as well, however, is less present comparing to the other variables. Based on this information, we built a kind of classification. I'm not going to go into the details, but maybe let me focus on the first cluster, this with the pink color. So the more close to the targeted solution, targeted situation. So here we can see the short description. In this cluster, we more frequently expect to have females better educated with a high consumption level and with a higher income as well. This income factor seems to be an important one, so we decided to look more carefully into the income topic. And on the map, you can see on the vertical variable, percentage of population who declares 5 portions or more, so heavy consumption of fruits and vegetables. And on the horizontal axis, we put GDP per capita, so very simple statistics. As you can clearly see, there is a correlation. So the higher the income is per capita, the higher consumption is expected. But on the other hand, R-square parameter is not so high, it's just 30%. So it suggests that besides this income, there is a number of other variables like local characteristics, what is linked to the previous information I provided you with, which impact the consumption of fruits and vegetables. And if you would like to make some conclusions, definitely we should put attention to the level of consumption and understand better what are the conditions under which the consumption might grow. From the previous slides I presented you with, is a clear indication that people with high consumption are quite similar each other, but these people are not as important in terms of promotional or proper food consumption behavior as the people with a lower consumption. And as you remember, when we take into consideration those ones who did not consume at all or has a lower consumption from 1 to 4 portions a day, they are very different from country to country. So the main recommendation from this conclusion might be, when preparing promotional programs for supporting consumption of fruit and vegetables, we should rather build very general framework on the regional level, like on the EU level, but then we need to prepare very carefully developed local strategies which took into consideration very important local conditions. If you would like to read more about the results of the whole study, the paper is available in open access under this link. It will be provided in the end in the presentation. And if you would have any further questions, I would be more than happy to answer. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Michel, for having shared the very interesting results. Indeed, the study is already shared in the note and program, and we will share it further as a source of further knowledge. And what I would like to acknowledge as well is the type of very focused research per countries, be it Europe, Africa, or elsewhere, is where you learn a bit the local conditions, as you mentioned, and sometimes some of the things you expect, to happen, because any of us has kind of ideas, or is not at all what the research tell us. And indeed, very targeted messages, not only on the promotion of fruits and vegetables, but that can guide policy decision and ourselves, on how to promote, or the private sector as well, how to promote healthy consumption are very, very useful. And I certainly, we know that, normally high level, because price comes in, the better incomes could eventually, trigger more consumption of fruits and vegetables. But even those, in some parts of the world could be a challenge. But indeed, very interesting on the education, income, age, of course, and that's one. Very pleased that at least young people could adopt more consumption. Yeah. That's very, very, very encouraging, actually.
That's true. That's true. And just let me comment a little bit. I am really keen to this education level, because it means that people with a certain awareness level, even maybe do not have like enough income, they are more into the consumption of fruits and vegetables. So it might be very important when building promotional programs.
Exactly. Thank you very much. On gender, I thought that eventually women who still, lead a lot of the family decisions, so children decisions and so on, could have impact, on what the family and what the kids could do. But indeed, I also noted from different research that is not clearly demonstrated. So we need more data as well. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much.
So we come back to you, please ask questions, bring insights as usual. And now we listen to Dr. Frans Volkvoort, Associate Professor at Tilburg University. Very pleased to have you as well. Thank you very much for joining us. I know you are very busy also between conferences. You are a co-founder and partner of PredictBuy, a research and expert consultancy company located in Barcelona, in Spain. You work also as an expert for the World Health Organization, the European Commission, and other international organizations. And actually, it will complement very well Dr. Michal's presentation, is you focus on the psychological mechanism that explain the role of food marketing on eating behavior, and you know how we can use these lessons to improve the eating behavior, and also to make sure that, you know, we promote sustainable and healthier consumption, and hence fruits and vegetables come in as well. You are of course involved in many research projects, for example, Horizon Europe initiatives and others. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for joining us, for also sharing the results of your research. Please.
Yes, thank you for the perfect introduction. That's almost a perfect summary of what I'm going to tell. And also, I think it complements the great presentation of Dr. Gazdecki. So thank you for that. As you already mentioned, we should focus, because nowadays we see that the majority of people, they eat too much unhealthy foods and not enough healthy foods. And under healthy foods, I of course understand fruit and vegetables. And the main reason why this is because of food marketing. We see that food marketing, especially influencers, are eating behavior in a negative way. As I already mentioned, my educational background is in psychology and sociology. I have a PhD in social sciences, and currently I'm working as a professor at Tilburg University, but also as a partner at PredictBuy, which is a company indeed located in Barcelona. And there we do a lot of scientific research and consultancy to WHO, but also to UNICEF and European Commission. And we conduct a lot of Horizon Europe and innovative health initiatives together with many other partners. So I want to start with a very recent but also highly important publication by the WHO. It's called Commercial Determinants of Non-Communicable Diseases in the WHO European region. And what they actually are saying is that the four major industries, so the food industry, but also the alcohol and tobacco industry, they influence our health in a very negative way. And they do this through several different initiatives. First of all, of course, the marketing and the continuous and omnipresence of their food, but also the lobbying and other impacts they have to keep selling the products that actually make ourselves chronically ill. So one of the things that we have seen is that we live in an obesogenic food environment. So between 90 and 95% of the expenditure on food marketing, but also the exposure, is for unhealthy foods. Actually, the foods that we should consume to a very limited extent. As you can see, less than 1% of the marketing is used to promote fruit and vegetables, although all the guidelines, national but also subnational, show that we should eat more fruit and vegetables. What we also see is that both this marketing and then again the availability of these food products in the supermarkets across different member states and different countries, we see that around 80 to 90% of the foods in the supermarkets are only food products that we should eat to a very limited extent, that are not recommended by the national and international food guidelines, and that is linked directly to the food marketing that we see on television, but also on social media. This is actually what is happening currently. So the expenditure on traditional kind of media like television and newspapers, but also journals, is reducing, and radio is decreased the last few decades. And what we see is that most of the investments are made on social media to target especially youth to eat unhealthy foods. And these influencers, as they are called, and these are two famous influencers from the Netherlands, they only promote unhealthy foods. And especially young people, also my two children, they are very vulnerable and susceptible to this kind of advertising. And they have actually no idea that these influencers are actually being paid to advertise these food products. We also see that children are being used by their parents to promote these vlogs on YouTube and other platforms like TikTok and also Instagram and Facebook, to reach more audience, and also to target as many children as possible to promote especially unhealthy foods. Part of this is influenced by the system that we actually have now, the infrastructure, the economic infrastructure of the food industry. We currently live in a capitalistic food system where very small organizations and multinational companies are actually the owners of almost all our foods. And they also are in competition with each other because they are they have shareholders, they need to make more profit and maximize their outputs as much as possible, which means that they need to sell every year more of their products. And this, of course, influences the health of our global citizens, because if you consume more every year, of course, this affects your weight, but also the chronic diseases that you perceive. So because they're in competition with each other, they need to advertise everywhere. So they try to beat each other in a competition, and some sort of prisoner's dilemma to determine and motivate the consumers to eat more of their products. And because they're in competition, they try to be as effective as possible. And one of the tools that the food industry is nowadays using is they try to segmentize their food marketing by using all kinds of instruments to collect as much information as possible. For example, social media platforms, they sell their data to food companies that subsequently use this data to be able to tailor and target their advertising more effectively to ensure that every invested euro or dollar or whatever currency you want to use is as effective as possible, because they have simple economic calculations that every euro that they invest in advertising needs to be a return of investment. And therefore, the more information you collect of your recipient, the more effective you can make your marketing campaign. What I did, and I will not bore you too much, because normally I teach students this in 7-8 weeks, so I will definitely not try to do this in 10-15 minutes. But what we see is that we have the same physiological and psychological reactivity to food than many other animals have. For example, if you have a dog or if you have pets, then you know that if you want to give them food, they already become very energetic and they really are eager to eat this food. They produce a lot of saliva. They also have different neurological responses to this food. And this is actually what the food industry also tries to achieve, that you are wanting and needing these foods that they advertise, and then subsequently you are able to buy or consume these foods, because it's very difficult to not think and stop actually wanting these food products at a later stage. So what they try to achieve is to try to show images and food products in a very palatable way, and in a very tasty way, that the recipients of this message, they already start thinking and producing saliva, and already the stomach is being prepared to eat the foods, in order to increase the probability that you will eat these foods. And these are my two daughters. When they were younger, it was the birthday of my oldest one. She became 5. So what we did is we bought cake. But then if you see at my youngest daughter, she is already preparing for the food, and she already knows that what she's going to consume at a later stage will be very tasty and palatable, and will be very rewarding. It can, of course, be a plastic cake or a fake cake, but she knows that based on what she sees, and also based on previous experiences, that the cake contains a lot of sugar and also fat. So therefore, she knows it will be very palatable, and it will make her also feel very good. But then, of course, you can say, yeah, but Frans, this is just N-1. So what does this mean? I have more examples. So there we see the same. So if we look at how people respond to unhealthy foods that contain a lot of salt, sugar, and fat, people have this predisposition, like all animals have, to eat these unhealthy foods and to prepare themselves to eat these foods. And this is actually one of the consequences. I mean, I think that most of you know, but worldwide we have a pandemic or epidemic of people that are overweight or obese, and they are struggling with their weight for many years now. And this, the main consequence is because we eat too much unhealthy foods that are energy dense and that contain too much calories that we actually should use for our bodies, because we also reduce our physical exercise. This balance has been destroyed actually. So, but maybe it's more important to also look at how this is achieved. For example, we have for me, it's a very symbolic example. We have American Samoa, which is a very small island, which is very difficult to reach. That from traditions, they were used to eat foods that are produced on the island themselves, or that are caught in the sea. But now, of course, this is a beautiful island that we all want to visit. At least I live in the Netherlands, so for me this is paradise. And if you have been to the Netherlands, you will probably acknowledge this. But what we also see is that 75% of the population there is obese. So they have the highest prevalence of people that are obese. as a consequence of the introduction of the American food culture on this small island. But then, of course, the question is on what now, because we are not here to discuss about the unhealthy food industry and about how marketing is working there, but I think that we should learn a lesson. And this is actually what we also try to do. And this is a very famous example called the blue zones. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but actually they showed here in this narrative, which is a little bit romantic, but still, I think the core message is very important, is that they showed that statistically seen, they have a higher probability of people living there in a healthy age, but old age, but they are still quite healthy. So they have more people living above 100 and still physically and mentally quite healthy. So then, of course, the question is, how can we achieve such a blue zone, a zone where people can live and eat healthier and exercise and also have sufficient social relationship? Because if you ask 1,000 of your family and friends, I think that 999 will say, yes, I would like to have a healthy, long, and social life. But then, of course, the question is, why don't we do this? Because we have all the information there. This is several national nutritional guidelines. Some of them are based on the WHO guidelines. Some of them are national guidelines. So we have all the information there. We know that we need to eat a lot of fruit and vegetables. We know that we even do not need to eat unhealthy foods, but if you do it in a very limited amount. So all this information is already there for many decades. The translation of this information has been trying to be symbolic and also very straightforward to make them effective. But at the same time, as my colleague just showed, the population that is actually eating sufficient fruit and vegetable is limited. And I think this was also based on self-report. So if you then subsequently would also look at the actual intake, this might even be lower than what what people report themselves. One of the things that I find is very important as well, that is closely linked to these blue zones, is the Eat Lancet Commission, which is a group of scientific researchers that try to establish, hey, if we assume that we have 8 to 9 billion people living on this planet, how can we build a food system? How can we establish an infrastructure that is making sure that all of these citizens can eat sufficient and healthy diet, and at the same time also take care of the planet Earth, that we do not overconsume, because then next generations are not able to eat these kind of foods. And most of the most significant recommendation is that we need to eat more planet-based foods and less meat, for example. Recently, I think just a few weeks ago, there was a very significant publication also that showed actually if people actually eat these kind of foods that was recommended by the Eat Lancet Commission, they also shown significant positive health conditions. So there was much less mental diseases, physical diseases. They felt also better, and they also had a better state of mind based, and of course this is all observational, on the food consumption that they did. So following actually the planetary health diet leads also to a healthier society. This is what the conclusion of this article was. So what did I do with a friend? Because we try to learn from the scientific research focusing on the unhealthy food marketing. How can we use all these instruments that the food industry is implementing to sell their unhealthy food products, to sell healthier food products? And one of the things, of course, is that we need to promote fruit and vegetable much more often. We need to show children especially that they are there, that you can eat them, and that they're also very good for you. So we should repeat this message, that the basic food should be fruit and vegetable, and you can consume it all day, every day, and also for some of the products as much as they want. Then subsequently, we need to find some kind of promotion and communication strategies. As Dr. Gazdecki already said, social media is a very effective form for especially youth to promote these kind of food in a very attractive way, to get the attention, to make them more rewarding. Because nowadays, the implicit nutritional value of unhealthy foods is already facilitating a lot of motivation for people to consume them. Fruit and vegetables is not able to do so because they have a different nutritional structure. So we need to find a way to communicate them in a very effective way to make them also very palatable, rewarding, and maybe even sexy. Subsequently, we of course see also, and we hope that children will consume the fruit and vegetables. And that if you do this over time, this will also create some kind of habit formation, that it becomes normal to eat this kind of foods, and this will lead to a healthier health status. Of course, we see, and I mean, we have people from all over the world in this meeting. We have individual and contextual factors, so we should always take into account that there are differences between countries, and even within countries, we have significant differences between different socio-economical groups. Again, this was something that was very clearly explained in the previous presentation. So we need to take into account that we need to target different groups in a different way. Only sharing information from top down is not working. We need to find a way to co-create with all the stakeholders to make it more effective. To summarize, because I was told I only have 10 to 15 minutes, and as you know, professors can talk for hours, so I will try to stop as soon as possible. Food marketing is predominantly promoting unhealthy food. We see it everywhere, in some countries even more than other countries. This has led to an increase of obesity worldwide, and especially, which is much more important, is we see that this unhealthy food diet leads to chronic diseases that are preventable. So it is very important to communicate also that if you want to have a healthy life, you should eat healthier and have a healthier lifestyle. We see that there is insufficient promotion for healthy plant-based diets, which should be increased extensively. And of course, the availability is mostly for unhealthy foods. I mean, as I just showed you, I have 2 daughters. If we go out to do something fun, it's almost impossible to buy something healthy. And I live in the Netherlands, but I think that in other countries, this is the same. But it's also very important, and I think that's also very good of this meeting, and I think of this collaboration that we try to establish here, is to work together. So we have in all systems across countries, but also globally, we have different systems that work together. This is called the quintuple helix model, where we see that different actors, if they don't work together, it's useless. If the scientific research is not implemented or followed up by the political system, or if companies that try to sell healthy food products cannot survive, it will never happen. So we need to find a way to work together, to change the system, to make a healthogenic food environment, as I call it, because as I said, we now live in an obesogenic food environment. We need to change this to a healthogenic food environment where everyone is working together to make our citizens healthier. Not only for yourself, but also for your neighbors and for your close environment. So all the different actors need to work together. This was my presentation. So if you have any questions, or if you, I give the floor back to Isolina.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wolf. It's very, very interesting. It's a very passionate, topic, very complex, but extremely interesting. And I like the convergence and the complementarity with Dr. Michel. And perhaps in the questions, one thing I would have myself, and I encourage, of course, the audience to put them in the chat, is the food system, as you say, being very, very concentrated in just the hands of a few companies actually who decide our food system, which is indeed very unhealthy. How we could convince those, while we do other things, of course, in parallel, how we could convince those who are key players of investing, so making money, which is one, of course, of their drivers, into healthy, because the fruits and vegetables is also, a sector that you can make money from. All the operators we have, etc. So how we could just bring them on board, through the perhaps economic lenses, and then the rest will follow, because it's extremely. And I like very much the examples you put in the Pacific or elsewhere. It happens that in my previous life I work a lot in the region, and when you see historically in those small islands, even if you look at the photos in Vanuatu, in Samoa, etc., they were absolutely not obese at all. The whole food system changed, extremely processed, ultra processed imported food, and one of the biggest, highest non-CD, non-communicable diseases, rates in the world, with terrible deaths. So I would like to understand as well. Certainly, we can contribute to the marketing and messaging. There is a part of the policy, of course, that has to take it seriously as well. Perhaps incentives, perhaps taxes to unhealthy, products. There are also things you can do at policy level. But of course, that's where the next one come in, and I like very much your collaboration as well, idea at the end. And the private sector, we are going to listen now. The two companies we have from the north and from the south will complement a bit the picture. They are in the field, they deal with consumers, they have to adapt their offer to what consumers demands, etc. So I would like really to give the floor and that they share with us how do they see that, what are the trends, how they have to adapt to consumer needs, do they see any positive, change towards more consumption of fruits and vegetables because they are in this industry in particular. So we start by David Muya, Managing Director of the Fresh Approach in Kenya. He has more than 20 years of experience on the fruit and vegetable industry. He has grown up in a family farm in Machakos, Eastern Kenya. Already his mother started the company which had exported at the time mainly to the United Kingdom. But then him and his sister came on board on the family business, and here you have still the company today from a very small family starting. You have, of course, experience in the supply of fruits and vegetables in the European countries. You are now broader, France, Germany, etc., where you supply, all year around. And also to the local market, like many of the operators we have, they serve different markets now. So could you share with us your perspective, and of course anything you add from what you have heard previously on your experience? And we hope as well, because Kenya today has some internet challenges, so I'm crossing fingers that you can make your presentation in good conditions. Thank you very much for being with us, David. Please go ahead. You are muted, but yes, if you make the presentation and share your presentation, unless of course you want, we do it from our side in 10 minutes, if this is possible.
Okay. There you go. Thank you very much for that introduction. Like Isolina said, my name is David Moya. I'm the Managing Director of Fresh Approach. Like she said, Fresh Approach has been in existence for 20 years. And we have a long family history of the fruits and vegetable industry. So what I'm here to talk about is how Fresh Approach is trying to navigate the fruits and vegetable industry, both locally and in the EU. And we find that the trends are more or less the same, where price is an issue. And we have two types of customers. For example, in the EU, we have the distributor, and we also deal with the supermarket in France. And what we basically do is we are more reactionary to what the trends are. For example, the French supermarket would insist that we switch from plastic pallets. Oh, where is my slide? Sorry. Can everybody see that?
Yes, full screen would be better if you can. If not, no worries.
Full screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, okay, I'll just start from slide number 1. So when I was growing up, our packing sizes have become smaller. I don't know if that's because the family unit is becoming smaller in the European market, but we now tend to do a bit smaller sizes of pre-packs. When we used to do a standard, what we still do, a 500 gram panet of say, French beans. These days we do a bit smaller, maybe 150 grams, 250 grams, 100 grams, depending on the product. Snoopy, Sugar Snap, even passion fruit tends to be packaged in a bit smaller packages. So basically, I'm thinking maybe it's because the consumer these days doesn't have a large family to feed. They prefer that. Secondly, like I was saying, we have two different tiers of customers. We have the distributor and the supermarket. And most of the distributors, for example, in the UK, would prefer this kind of packaging, which is just beans in a perforated bag, which is not a bad thing, but I think it's a good thing for us because it's cheaper. Yeah, but I don't know what they deal with when it comes to the environment and disposal. Then, of course, we have the plastic pallets, and this is what we tend to do more of these days. But now the supermarket these days, that we deal with, now would prefer us to put our beans in paper pallets and most of our produce in paper pallets. I think that's to cater for their particular kind of customers, and I think they tend to be more high end than the distributor. So I'm assuming that the distributor would do more the mom and pop shops, and the supermarket is dealing with the higher end individual consumers. It's the same thing also in Kenya, where you find that most Kenyans don't shop for their vegetables in the supermarket. They tend to go to the the open air markets where you can pick exactly what you want, and it's much cheaper because you don't have to worry about packaging and all these things. So that's, I think, is where maybe the supermarkets are going, where the customers are maybe more informed than the normal customer, where they prefer something a bit more environmentally safe, something that is biodegradable or something to that effect. Here now, this is one of the strategies that we've been trying to employ with my partner, who happens to be my wife. So she's the one who runs our social media presence for Fresh Approach. So more and more, we are trying to educate the consumer, or not the consumer, but our client who happens or who deals maybe directly with the consumer, the end consumer. So we like to try and give more information about the healthiness of our produce, what it contains, and how it was produced. And this, we think maybe they could transfer this information to their customers, and maybe that will trickle down to us. Secondly, we also on the start with the CSR. Our supermarket customers would really like to see us, especially in the UK. We don't have a supermarket, but we have a big time, I think, catering. I think the catering distributor, or the catering company that supplies to different schools or institutions. So they insist on this kind of CSR, corporate social responsibility, where they'd like you to get all this certification. And I think that's why the trends have been going, where we went from Global Gap, and then now there's a point, there was this trend that we thought that organic was going to be a thing, but it really didn't catch on very well. And you find that in most places, I know in Kenya, I don't know if it's in Europe also, but organic products tend to be more expensive. So I don't think that really caught on, but the supermarkets tend to insist that you have to have some social and some corporate social footprint. So we also try to advertise ourselves on social media, be it linked or be it Facebook, the steps that we are doing to try to make sure that we are trying to be socially responsible. So I think we have the Global Gap social responsibility phase or clause is called GRASP. So we have GRASP, and now some markets like Germany would require you get smarter. So we are in the in the motions of getting that. So this is what I'm trying to say, is that basically it's what we are told to do. So if the market decides that Fresh Approach has to have some social responsibility, then we try and do that. Sustainable farming. This one is very interesting because you find over the years, because I don't know if it's a COVID issue, but it seems that since COVID, price has been the underlying factor for all our customers. So what do we do to make ourselves a bit more competitive? Because if the prices aren't going to change, and I remember I was in Berlin earlier this year for the Fruit Logistica, and we had a talk there, a seminar over there, and this one speaker said, if you expect the prices to go up, you're kidding yourself. So what we're trying to do, instead of using the conventional fertilizers, the DAPs, they tend to be detrimental to the soil. So we're trying to do more with organic fertilizer, manure. We're trying to use rabbit urine for foliar fertilizer, and this is working well because it's quite cheap, it's readily available, and as long as I can keep my costs down, then maybe I can, keep up with whatever is going on in terms of the prices, because everything seems like it's going up. I think worldwide everything is going up, but unless you find more sustainable ways to do it, I don't think you're going to survive. We moved from hydroelectricity. Now we are using solar in the farms. So that's also been a very big factor when it comes to reducing the cost, so that we can be able to maintain our prices and make sure that we're as competitive as possible. Of course, social responsibility also would mean workers are happy and they're in a safe environment, and that kind of thing. But yes, these are really the driving factors for Fresh Approach, to make sure that whatever we're doing is sustainable, because you find that if we're not using the local cow manure, the DAPs and the other fertilizers tend to make the soil acidic. And you find over the years, and this trend I've seen it for quite some time, you need bigger and bigger blocks to produce less and less food. So that has been working out for us quite well. Now, some trend that didn't really go anywhere for us, and I don't know if it is a thing, or maybe those are locally produced foods. There's a point maybe some 15, 20 years ago, ready to eat was a thing. And I remember we had a very big client in the UK, and they wanted us to go high care. That's what we used to call it locally, high care, where you'd be able to, produce the food, pack the food, and whoever can pick it from the supermarket and eat it straight from the box. But that didn't go very well. Another thing that also I thought was an emerging trend was mini vegetables. But the quantities of mini vegetables that are required in the market are so little, it's not sustainable for the farmer to grow. So we completely shelved that idea, because you can't produce 150 kgs of a shipment of 2 tons, and you expect that to feed your workers. So a growing joke that we have with one of my clients, he always tells me that if I'm too expensive, then the customer will look for something else to eat. So here I have a picture of, I think, popular root vegetables in Europe. So he always tells me, if they're not eating French beans, they're going to find something else to eat, and it's not going to be you, not going to be your products. So other than that, thank you for that. Other than that, more and more we are seeing that the market or the clients, tend to want to push, or even the government in Europe especially, tend to push less and less use of pesticides. I'm all for that, but when you find that you're using less and less pesticides, yet the environment is becoming more prone to these pesticides, you find that you can't really produce, how do you say it? For example, a perfect tomato. So unlike in Europe, in Africa, we don't really shop with our eyes. We will pick a flawed tomato, and that would be good. So the price of sustaining yourself in terms of sustaining agriculture with less and less pesticides is becoming more and more expensive, because you need more and more pesticides to be able to produce a perfect vegetable. And that's about it for me. If anybody has any questions. Okay.
Isolina, I don't think we can hear you.
I hope I was clear. And I think that's the end of my presentation.
Yes, the presentation was very clear. Thank you very much, David. I think, Isolina, we couldn't hear you when you were coming back. Now we still cannot hear you. Technical struggle. Can you try again?
Yes, I'm trying. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's not very loud, but we can hear you. Yes.
Yes, sorry, I don't know what has happened. I mean, yes, let's just go on. Thank you very much, David, for this presentation. Thank you for bringing the price element, but also all these constraints sometimes for the enterprises, which are environmental and social, which at the end, are also benefiting, of course, the consumers, because it's part of the healthy habits, and you make the way that even if it's an investment, it's also good for the business. I mean, the sustainable farming and taking into consideration social and environmental factors towards sustainability is also a very good thing. So, and the trends you gave in Africa, which are very, very interesting as well, and the ready to eat, etc., is a bit the same in Europe. At least as a consumer, I see that is a bit decreasing, because obviously with all the plastic and unless they are different and more sustainable materials used, it's also a problem. I mean, so thank you very much. We get back to you. So the next, and Axel alert me if I have sound problems, but the final speaker before we get to the questions is Karen Latchell from Wilmore in the United Kingdom. We are very pleased to have you. Is also a company we know well, who is in the COLEAD board. We are very, very proud of the work done. And you join as the category manager, so you have a lot of experience a bit on the analysis of customers and fast-moving consumer goods. So you specialize in category strategy, data analytics, and client management. So very happy that you share with us, some of your insights in 10 minutes maximum, please. Karen, welcome from the UK.
Thank you, Isolina. Thank you for having me here. That was a lovely introduction. And the presentations presented by my fellow panelists were really insightful. I'm going to share my screen and just a second. No. Sorry. Is my screen visible now?
Not really. It's on your webpage. Yes, now yes. If you put it in full screen, it's perfect.
I will do that. So, factors affecting consumer choices for fresh fruit and veg. So, in this presentation, obviously, we will talk about the factors that affect in the UK market. So, this is only for the UK market. The research is based on that. But then, as Isolina said, that I work for Wheelmoor, so we'll bring how Wheelmoor creates a difference and how we react on these consumer trends and choices that the shoppers make while buying this fruit and veg. So, starting with the presentation, just to give an introduction about the business or Wheelmoor, where I work, what we do as a business. So, it's a family-owned global business. It specializes in growing, packaging, marketing of specialty and seasonal veg, herbs, mangoes, and other fruit. And we also deal in fresh cut and prepared veg now. So we grow and produce homegrown seasonal vegetables, chilies, and herbs. We also provide global and local provenance. And then we're a food business as much as a produce business driven by great people here and overseas. So we have three sites in the UK where we divide our work and we supply in UK and also in Europe. As a business, getting to net zero is a key driver for us, and we're continually investing in our growing and manufacturing capability. So we're working on the supply chain, we're working on innovation, and from a global and local strategic supply chain point of view, we have a unique and unparalleled leverage because we have connections and relationships with the growers all over the world, and we try to translate to a better value for products for a variety of different channels. So this was basically about Wheelmood, and these are the products that we sell across the market in UK and Europe. So we have these categories: side of plate, meal centers, carbohydrates, chopping boards, fruit, frozen fruit, and prepared fruit. And we'll see how this comes into picture, but this is our these are three sites where we package and supply our fresh produce and fruit. And then obviously based on sourcing, these are our partnerships and some of the long-term agreements that we have with our growers all over the world. And then these are some of the customers, and there are plenty of UK-based customers, but then there are some international players as well, like Aldi, Costco, Lidl. So moving on, and then finally moving to the presentation now to see what's happening and what are the factors that really affect these consumer choices. So before beginning, just giving a bit of background, what has happened in the last 5 years. So a lot has happened. We had COVID in 2020, which seems distant now, but followed by COVID, there was inflation in the UK, which also resulted in a cost of living crisis. There's political uncertainty in the world, and obviously the climate crisis is also happening. So a lot has happened in the last 5 years, and it does affect how consumers buy their fruit and veg. But moving on, so just to give an idea from an inside point of view, so this is basically the UK market broken in terms of spend. So as you can see, 63% of the spend happens still in grocery stores or bigger supermarkets in the UK, and other like out of home occasions like visiting a cafe or takeaway or grocery multis are still on the lower end. So its majority is still happening in the supermarkets. And then obviously just to get an idea or get a feel of the market and the macro trends. So as you can see on the box on the extreme left, cost of living. So in the UK, the purchases of fresh veg is at a 40-year low, which is quite scary to be in, like a scary situation to be in. But and at the same time, only 6 to 8% of total purchases are now veg for shoppers because they consider veg as a luxury. We'll see why that has happened. But then if you focus on the consumer insights box in the middle, less than one third UK population get their five a day. So they're five fruit and veg a day. That's only 33% of the population that gets it. And obviously, supermarkets are the main drivers in food to go, in fresh produce, in everywhere. So supermarkets are winning in the UK. They contribute to almost 90 to 95% spend in all of market for fresh produce. And then obviously we'll move on to the deck to see what are the key decision factors. It can be price and promotion, convenience, environmental impact, but it's a lot driven by pricing as of now. And the own label brands are really pushing the growth in the market, and it's all promotional driven because of the cost of living crisis. But we'll see how these factors affect So moving on, this is based on the UK market. So based on an older survey, what it showed was that 80% of the UK population consider freshness, where freshness, according to them, is appearance and perception of freshness. So when they go into the supermarket, how they see the fresh produce, how it looks, that is the main criteria of deciding whether they will buy that fresh produce. So it's the biggest factor, and obviously it increases with increasing income. So a higher or more affluent shopper will base his or her decision more on freshness than a lower affluent group. But based on from a private perspective or from our company's perspective, Wheelmore's perspective, what we do, so we do have an effective supply chain, we have customer benchmarking, we have one count handling. These are the ways that we're trying to adjust and trying to make our fresh produce or the fresh produce that we sell to the supermarkets as fresh and as good as in the appearance, bringing out those colors. And then moving on, the second factor that comes into play is obviously pricing. So pricing doesn't come behind freshness. Almost 79% of the UK population consider pricing over any other factor while buying fresh produce in the supermarkets, and obviously it decreases for higher income groups or more affluent groups. And this is a very scary fact that I saw, that 60% of shoppers in the UK, they sacrificed on fresh fruit and veg due to cost of living crisis. And according to them, or according to market surveys, fresh fruit or fresh produce is the first category where family shoppers sacrifice in difficult times. Now, it's a bit interesting also at the same time, because if they're not buying fresh produce, what are they really buying? So I've put a photo here. As you can see, it's from a retailer in the UK, Asda, and it sells a macaroni cheese ready meat for £1, which is equivalent to 1.2 euros in Europe. So as you can see, there are very cheaper options in the market, ultra processed foods, where people are trying to get away from ultra processed foods, but it's still in the market. And some of the consumers in UK want to get this convenient meal, and they don't want to get through the process from scratch cooking. Then moving on, so the next factor that comes into mind of consumers is taste. So 57% of the consumers prefer taste over anything when they buy fruit and veg. And obviously, taste is something that you can't just see in the supermarket. You have to eat it, or you have to take it home and prepare it to know the taste of the item, or taste of the fresh produce. So what it really means from taste is repeat purchases. For example, if I like something, I'll go and again buy that fruit from the same supermarket or the same grocer. So that's where taste comes into play, the repeat purchases. And from a Wheelmoor perspective, from a private sector perspective, we have these ripe and ready fruits that we sell in the supermarkets that are obviously more sellable, and the consumers really want to have it right there and then. We do continuous benchmarking to see if the produce that we're buying or we're selling to the supermarket, is it at par with our competition, what's selling in the market in general. And obviously, we as a business focus on repeat rates to push this initiative forward. Then all year round availability. So it's exactly not a deciding factor, because if it's not available, consumers won't be able to buy it. But still, more than half of the consumers in the UK really want their fruit and veg to be available all around the year. It doesn't matter if it's seasonal or not, but they want it all around the year. And obviously, this comes with a price tag sometimes, because if it's not in the season, it's an imported produce. So there's a premium that consumers need to pay for it, and 30% of the consumers are willing to pay for it. And obviously, as the incomes increase or more affluent groups come into play, this number increases to 42%, which are willing to pay a premium on these fruit and veg. And from a Wheelmoor perspective, what we do to bridge these gaps is we provide supermarkets with an all year round availability. We have very strong grower relationships to understand and demand and availability in the market. And obviously, we've been completing the loop for 50 years now. So we have a bit of understanding of how this plays out. Then moving forward, like we discussed, all year round availability, but then there's seasonal fruit and veg also, which is really something very important to the UK market, I would say. For example, right now we're in the midst of asparagus season, where UK asparagus is sold across the market. And consumers also really want to get into this UK season. They want to buy UK apples, UK strawberry, UK asparagus. So it's a very key period for us. And obviously, 1/3 of the consumers want seasonal fruit and veg in the stores. This increases with higher income groups. But there's one of the factors there that 80% of the consumers in UK believe that supermarkets as a whole don't do enough to promote this seasonal veg and create awareness. For example, there was an article that I read in which it was about carrots, how consumers in the UK never knew that the season came and went. So they really feel that it's more of a supermarket's responsibility to create that awareness, to push that messaging around the store that this is seasonal and this is UK seasonal, which does promote sales, but also promotes awareness in the consumer. And from a wheel mood perspective, as you can see, we're targeting premium customers because obviously seasonality comes at a price. We've introduced summer only ranges. And as you can see, we have this box that we sell in some of the retailers, which is a version of the Indian mango. So this is available during the summer months. But we're really trying to get best of seasonal fruit and veg to the UK. Then moving on in terms of country of origin. So after seasonality, now we're looking at country of origin. So almost a quarter of the population in UK, or 25% of the population in UK, really base their decision on country of origin. For example, the messaging around country of origin does help customers to choose better, but overall only 25% base their decision on this. And from a wheel mood perspective, what we do, so we support local growers. We have supply from all around the world, and we really focus on these main British seasons, like the British asparagus season, which is one of our core seasons where we supply. And just to give an idea, you can see photos on the left, the messaging in supermarkets around the UK. And then now environment is a very important factor, and consumers as a whole, their decision is not based on the environmental impact. Only 18% of the consumers buy their fruit and veg considering environmental aspects or environmental repercussions on this. But the main idea behind that is that from a consumer point of view, if they're going to a retailer, which is a renowned retailer in the UK, they expect the retailer to make all the environmental or to keep in mind all the environmental aspects and then serve the customer. So from a customer point of view, he or she is doing his or her job by buying the fresh produce. But from a supply chain point of view, from the sourcing point of view, that responsibility the consumer believes is with the supermarket. And but with as you can see on the left, we have somewhere a picture around packaging, the plastic packaging, and UK has a target of selling 30% of fruit and veg loose by 2025, which WRAP NGO, which is a UK-based NGO, fears that it might not be possible. And then, as you can see, Tesco, which is a retailer in the UK as well as Europe, it's removed stickers from avocados. As you can see, they've printed or like put it like in an environment friendly way on the avocado itself, the brand name and the size of the avocado, which is quite interesting. So a lot going on in terms of environment, but in terms of food waste, this is something that consumers are really guilty about, and that comes with environment, and they really want to do something about change and to reduce this wastage. And from a wheel mood perspective, what we do, so we are working towards this net zero goal, reduction of plastic. We have regenerative farms, water sustainability. We're doing supply chain innovations. We've reduced our air freight. So we're doing all of this to make sure that we're making sure that everything is good from our end.
Then, just to wrap up, please. Yes.
Yeah, just last two slides. So just moving on from that, to see how this wastage affects the consumers. So as you can see, there's a changing trends. Consumer worries about wastages and seek better ways to cook and reduce overall waste. So like David said, that ready to eat hasn't picked up a lot maybe in Europe, but from a UK perspective, it's really growing. And as you can see on the chart below, the consumers for prep veg have increased from last year from 46% to 48% at an expense of the fresh veg consumers. So there's a shift happening in the UK. People don't want to waste a lot, and they're seeking convenient ways to cook. And so moving on to the last slide, and as you can see that there's a shift from fresh to prep. So These are two photos on the left from M&S, which is a UK-based retailer, Marks and Spencer. So they have these deals in which they have their fruit and veg in a bag. They have their sauces in a bag. They have noodles, pasta, whatever you want to buy. But it's a convenient way. The messaging is right. Okay, dine in at home. Just take these three things, put it in the pot and cook it. And as you can see, 63% of shoppers would buy more prepared salad or buy it more often if they knew they'd waste less. And I've put this photo where 40% of the crop suitable for UK whole head market is supplied, and the rest 60% is used in prepared. So prepared helps use our produce at 100% efficiency, which really helps in controlling those wastages. And it's a thing in the UK where people want their convenient meals to take lesser time. So 27 minutes to prepare a convenient meal as compared to 41 minutes for a scratch cooked meal. Then finally, from a wheel mood perspective, these are the these are the prepared fruit and veg that we sell across the market. We sell across retailers. As you can see, there are cut mango, there are tender stem broccoli, sugar snap bags. There's a TSP tender stem broccoli bags. So all of this we sell across the market. And then finally, to wrap it up, fruit and veg is at a 40-year low because of the current climate. People are buying other things at the expense of fruit and veg, like we saw ready meals. Pricing is the biggest factor after freshness. But the more affluent shoppers, they prefer fresher, tastier, and seasonal produce. Promotions play a very vital role in this, as 37% of consumers do not buy exotic fruit and veg due to cost barriers. Consumers are unaware about seasonal fruit and veg, and they want supermarket or grocery stores to create awareness about it. And just moving on, how consumers feel guilty about food wastages, and that's why prepared fruit and veg, meal boxes, meal kits, stir-fry deals, pasta deals, and meal deals are making their way into the market and really driving that growth in the market, because consumers want a convenient, sustainable, and affordable option that caters for their everyday needs. I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much, Karen. Very interesting and very complementary as well, because we learn as well new things. We were talking about the local context. The UK is also, of course, like any other country, local context, and it's true that some of the big promotions, etc., do not apply to the fruits and veg. Absolutely not, and is a driver, obviously, and people are used to that. The prepared meals as well is not always with vegetables, even if there is a tendency. And thank you for bringing also all this importance that people do not, consumers, we do not anymore necessarily have the information because we have available all the year. We don't know seasonality. We don't know what is behind even products. Who are the producers? Where does it come from? More information, and that also needs to be done by the private sector. So thank you so much. Fascinating, very interesting. The only constraint in those sessions is the time, because we would spend days. Is really very interesting. I think there are not many questions because it's all appreciations. So thank you very much. I have a couple of summary of the points raised that I will post to you a bit. And we will start perhaps with the researchers and any of you afterwards from the speakers. There were questions on, perhaps could you give examples on some local conditions that have a positive impact on fruits and vegetable consumption? Also, there is the issue of plastic. It came for David, but any of the private sector operators as well. I mean, how do you deal with these beans, vegetables packaged in plastic? And that is also the problem with the ecology, or even with the access to some markets. Then on the government policies, obviously there is government policies that need to be in place, and also the role of the private sector. Perhaps how do you see that happening? And is the research that we hear, I mean, the results of the research taken into account, enough taken into account by the policy makers who make decisions on, incentives, taxes, etc. And how to reach, or what kind of interventions we could have to reach better the lower socioeconomic groups, because they are also the ones that sometimes struggle. Should I start with the same order, and you answer the one you feel you want to, or you add other insights, of course. Dr. Michal?
Thank you very much. I guess the question directed to me was related to the local examples of what might have a positive impact on the consumption. And we were discussing with my colleague just after the question was raised on the chat. There are, of course, a lot of topics related to the culinary culture, yeah. But on the other hand, you need to have years to changes. And what we find quite interesting is an example of Ireland. Ireland decided in 2010 to introduce to the market zero VAT rate for fruits and vegetables. And after not so many years, the consumption of fruit and vegetables increased a lot. Yeah, so it means that still this economical motivation is really important. Of course, it might be different from country to country and from local conditions still, but this is something that at least has to be tested. So if you ask me about a good example, this is definitely an example I would recommend to check. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Karen has shown that in the supermarkets, you know, we need to have more of those pricing as well. Dr. Franz?
Yes, so thank you. And I also have to leave in 3 minutes, so I will be very short. I think that what we see in the Netherlands especially, and also work together with them in schools. So what we try to do is together with children and co-creation sessions to understand better what are the needs of youth in fruit and vegetable consumption. How can we make sure that they eat enough? Because of course they are also the future consumers themselves. But knowing that if you eat at a certain age, fruit and vegetables, there's also increases the probability to do at a later stage. Then again, also working together with sports clubs. I'm also the president of a tennis club, and we together work with the municipality to get subsidies to get fruit and vegetables for free, especially for those children from low economical statuses, that they can also eat foods that they normally at home don't eat. But especially also taking back the question about the socio-economical status, working from a public sphere, so working in a public area, like in schools, sport clubs, these kind of areas, it's easier to also target these children because then the standard is for everyone and they have the same options and chances than the other children that come from a higher socioeconomic status. And then, as I said, I work together with the WHO, and there we try to push the recommendation, always based on scientific evidence, and to the national and local policies to make sure that they implement them. And of course, lobbyists and other elements are also important to take into account. But in the end, if you keep pushing, at a certain moment, they need to protect the health of their citizens because this is the starting point from a government. So this is what I would like to say. And I want to thank you all. Thank you for the invitation. I need to go now. Sorry for the next meeting. But I wish you all the best and hope to see you anytime soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing the insights. Very, very interesting. And we keep in touch. We will send you all that. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Franz.
Bye-bye.
So, David, do you want to add something from the questions and from there was this thing on plastic? I think you elaborated a bit on the, you know, the constraints, I mean, social, environmental, but how do you deal with that? Or any of the other parts that you think the private sector or the public sector supporting the private one could do? Or any additional insights, David? You are muted. Because it's all appreciations you will see on contacts and sharing information, and so it's true. It's very interesting. So at the end, sometimes you have less questions. David, go on.
Like I said, from my perspective or from where I sit, it's more reactionary. It's what the customer is telling me to do, and if he thinks that we need to move from plastic to paper, then that's exactly what we'll do. But the worrying thing for me is that it's more expensive with paper than it is with plastic. So like I said, now my focus has to be how to bring down the cost of production. And that's how we are trying to keep afloat, by trying to make sure that whatever the market throws at us, we're able to be sustainable as a business. And also it's good for the environment.
No, absolutely. Yes, we know some of the challenges in meeting those regulations or customer demands. And there is sometimes some accompanying measures or, some incentives for the smaller operators in the private sector. Karen, do you have anything? It was an extensive presentation, very comprehensive, but do you have anything to add from those latest questions?
I think just touching upon the packaging part of it, the plastic part of it, I think from a business perspective, we can just try to make changes as much as we can, but it's our responsibility as well, and it's the grocery or the supermarket's responsibility as well, because at the end of the day, as a private business, we're governed by the laws that are imposed by the supermarkets, and we kind of have to follow them. But I think it's a change in the right direction, in which we're trying to talk more about environment. We're trying to make more changes about environment, and at the same time, we're trying to make sure that most people get their fruit and veg in any form. It can be fresh and prepared, like it does matter which form it is, but at the end of the day, it's about creating that consumption or increasing that consumption and increasing that 5 a day. So I think it's very interesting to just understand all of these perspectives, understand the pricing perspective, how really tight some budgets can be, where people have to really sacrifice on their fruit and veg. But I think it's a joint initiative by the private sector, by the supermarkets, and also by the government to achieve and really work towards creating an environment friendly and increasing that supply and demand in terms of consumers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are 2 minutes late, so I will give the floor to Jose. But from my side, just to thank you. It's very interesting. So we will dig into even more details, because it's a very complex issue, as we know. Myself, what I can tell you is a very, very practical thing. When I am in an hotel, when you travel, when you are in a conference, at the coffee break, I would like to find fruits, and I find cakes. I find, you open your little fridge in the hotel room and you say, no, I want to resist to all that. It's all processed, ultra processed. You don't have enough fruits and vegetables. And as Dr. Franz was saying, in the schools, we have to promote it, that people have it there. And if it's there, you also use it. It's practical steps. And then each one has a role to play. Jose, please. You are muted, I think. It's the day of, yes, me too. I apologize, but I don't know what. David did it very well. And from Europe, we have internet issues. No?
Yeah.
At least myself. Yeah, go on now, Jose. Jose, go on. I think I heard.
Yeah, you hear me now?
Now, yes.
Oh, sorry. I just want to thank, of course, COLEAD and all the speakers for their time and for sharing all their insights with us today. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, but well, I wanted to discuss, we'll discuss that later, the regulations and the impacts of EU regulations on fruit and vegetables. Lately, and we mentioned the packages, the fertilizers, the pesticides, all that has impact on fruit and vegetables, indirectly or directly. And as you mentioned, Isolina, the availability of fresh fruits and vegetables for the consumers is key as well. So again, thanks to everybody for attending this webinar. It was great to having you here. And we look forward to having you at the next one. Right, Isolina?
Absolutely, and we will share, yes, we will share all the documents. If you ask to us some contacts, because I see that there is a lot of, and that's also an objective of those sessions, you want to contact Dr. Michel, you want to contact David, Karen, etc., please send us an email. We need clearance, of course, there are rules on sharing data, but I know that they will more than pleased, because what they share today is about sharing information and sharing scientific data as well, and private sector experiences. So please do that. And we welcome you at a next session. Thank you very much to everybody. Thank you to OECD for the excellent collaboration. Thank you to all the speakers. It was fascinating. I learned a lot. I thank you for that. And I'm sure that the audience was also very, very appreciative, at least from what I see from the chat. Thank you and keep well.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.